Matthew, everyday audiophile, music lover, beer enthusiast. I know, today it's not a craft beer, but even I enjoy Shiner every once in a while. I can't always be having those heavy hitters. So now that we poured our beer, what are we going to talk about? Well, as I alluded to in the last video, it's going to be vacuum tubes today. But not just any 12AU7, but the oldest one in my collection against the newest one in my collection. And to give you just a taste of what this is a RCA Black Plate 12AU7 from 1953. That's what the date code is on it. If I could get the box open. There we go. We are going to be comparing that versus something that is over 80 years newer, the Raytube Select 12AU7 in a much nicer box. So first, let's talk about this. When you receive it, obviously it comes in a nice box. There is a label that you need to cut, and when you open it, it comes with the certificate of authenticity, which is kind of nice. It comes with a little booklet, and it comes with a sticker. And obviously, the matched pair of 12AU7s. Overall, the packaging, I think, is up there with the best. It definitely seems like a high-end tube. But as someone that enjoys rolling tubes, enjoys finding that tube that matches best with the equipment that I'm using at that time, it did make me wonder, how does something that is touted as a high-end tube today compare with one of the oldest and well thought of tubes in my collection? Sure, it isn't a Telefunken or a Mazda tube, but the RCA Black Plates are not to be laughed at. They're still a wonderful tube. And if you've been watching any of my previous videos, you know that I have been working on a tube comparison with all of the 12AU7s in my collection. Comes to about 20 different tubes, ranging from a $40 per pair to $500 or $600 per pair. So it's quite a wide range. The tubes are mostly in the 1960s to early 1970s, but it covers brands from RCA, Sylvania, RFT, Mazda's in there, Tesla, and GE, a few others. But that isn't what I really want to talk about today. It is, how do these tubes that are 80 years apart compare against each other? Well, let's talk about it. First, let's talk about the RCA, the Black Plate. I picked this up maybe 9 months ago. It isn't NOS, but it is 95% NOS. So it has been used, but as far as its condition is concerned, 95% might as well be NOS for me, for something that is 80 years old. If you go and look at reviews for other people that have this too, it's often said that it's a little soft in the high end. It has a mid-range bloom that you expect out of 1950s RCA, and the soundstage is nice and wide and deep, which to me is the most important factor. I can pretty easily confirm those. The soundstage is very nice and wide. It is very nice and deep, but it doesn't have that pinpoint accuracy that I like to expect from my gear. I'm not saying that it isn't accurate, that I couldn't tell that a voice was where it is, but just that it's smeared ever so slightly. It's still a lovely tube to listen to in that sense, but it's not something that is record-breaking with how precise it is. Not unlike the Sylvanias, those kind of share a similar aspect there, although a different tonal character. As we move from top to bottom, the highs are extended but rolled off a little bit. So when you look at the response of the speaker, I usually tend to prefer something that is rolled off about a dB or two from that 10 to 12K. And then from then off, it's a nice gentle slope. That's just to prevent fatigue for me, so it's just something that I prefer. This has that and a little bit extra. So if you're looking for that sparkle up top, this isn't going to be the tube for you. But if you already have a bright speaker, let's say you were pairing this with some Klipsch horns, they're heritage speakers, this could be a good one for you because it could tame that top end. It could turn it from something that is very fatiguing to listen to for, say, rock, into something that is just enjoyable to listen to through and through. Now, as we move further down into the mids, I think this is where it becomes very important to match this tube to the rest of your gear. If you already have a power amp that's on the warm side, this could take it over the edge. This is what I would call a warm tube in that it's a little bit bloomy in that mid-range, but not so much so that you think it is just overpowering your music with that warmth. It's just a hint there. The low end has some nice drive to it. It does go fairly deep, but not the deepest of all the tubes that I have. And it would be fair to say that it is detailed. It doesn't roll off. When I listen to Gun Has No Trigger by Dirty Projectors, the bass is taut, though not extremely tight. It is well timed, the pace is there, but it is not a very precise bass note. And what I just mean by that is the timing is there, but it's not the best that it could be. Now, that's not to say that that's an issue with the design of the tube in general, the 12AU7. It's just what I have here. Like I said, the soundstage is wonderful. The voicing on for vocals is tremendous. If I were to have this tube in my system full time, I would probably want to pair it with the solid state amp and listen to not rock. I don't think that is the place for this tube. With that though, let's talk about the Ray Tube Select 12AU7. Now, this retails for about $180 a pair, and as we can see, it is very nice packaging indeed. Right out of the gate, I hated this tube. I hated everything about it. And that just comes down to how bright it was. For the first 50 hours, this tube was unlistenable. It was where I talked about the RCA had a little bit more drop off in the highs. The Ray Select enhanced it. And with my setup, I had to leave it on playing music, not through the speakers, but just through the preamp overnight. And it wasn't until I came back 2 days later that the highs had leveled out and actually had a tremendous amount of detail on them. There was so much air in those highs that I thought I was listening to, interestingly enough, the 300Bs from Doug's system a few videos back. Him and his GR Research and Exoticas. That is what the tube reminded me of when I listened to it a few days later. In the mids, it is a very neutral tube. It is not warm like this RCA. It has a very flat response, but very realistic. To me, it's really impossible for a tube to sound cold, but this is as close as it can be while still being neutral. And I think that's a great thing. If you're looking for a system that is the speakers are already on the warm side, then this could be the right tube for you. The bass, though, is where I somewhat fell in love with this tube. It is not the best, but the bass goes so deep and has so much character in a good way that it made me wonder if I was listening to an all solid state system. And what I just mean by that is the bass was tight. The bass was tuneful. When I went to go listen to some of my double bass artists that I enjoy, it was one of the most realistic sounding tubes that I have in my collection as far as that goes. I could close my eyes and actually feel like the bassist was there instead of listening to a recording, which is what I would get out of this. Not to say that it's bad, right? These are very minute differences, but it's just enough that the new production tube edges it out. One area that Ray has talked about in their advertising and they talk about on the website is the noise levels of the tube, that it's a very quiet tube. And I can again confirm this. I already thought the Black Plate was a very quiet tube in that you listen to it and it's very low noise. You can't hear anything at the speaker level. But the Ray has an even deeper black background. And it didn't become apparent until listening to it and switching back. So after I'd let this play for about 100 hours or so, I started going back and forth between the two. And it wasn't until I'd listen for an hour or two in the RCA and then come back to the Ray Select that it became very apparent just how much darker those backgrounds were. And it gives that tube a sense of much greater dynamics because of that. Which made me a little bit sad. I was honestly expecting this RCA to come out on top because it is such a well-liked and well-regarded tube. But that just wasn't the case for me. I think overall, the neutral balance on the highs, mids, and lows makes this Ray Select the better tube of the two. In addition, the sound staging was just as precise, if not better, than the RCA. There's only one tube in my collection that I think best the Ray so far, but you're going to have to wait for that on a later video. Hopefully I will have that done soon, but we'll see. There's a lot of listening to be done still. So, as a closing statement, where do these two tubes land for me? If I had to pick one or the other, which one am I going to have? Unfortunately, it's going to be the new production. Or maybe I should say fortunately. It's nice because you can buy these. You don't have to go and hunt for them and look for a reputable seller that knows what they're doing and isn't charging you an arm and a leg. So the fact that you can buy this and you know the performance that you're going to get, I think that's a wonderful deal. But keep in mind that this tube needs a good 50 to 100 hours to run in before you can really listen to it. Besides that, I think that this is a winner so far, and I can't wait to talk about it as it compares to the rest of the tubes in my collection. Until then, I will see y'all later.